We'll start with the housekeeping details. And speaking is Doug Fuller, remotely from Scioto Township. And thank you for joining the Washtenaw County Road Commission for our November the 17th virtual working session. Before we start the session, there are a few housekeeping details I would like to cover. Number one, if you would like to make public comment during this meeting, we will prompt you at the appropriate time in the agenda to virtually raise your hand. If you are viewing this meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen, and then the Raised Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can virtually raise your hand by dialing *9. Once we get to the public comment on the agenda, we will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. The chat feature on this Zoom meeting is available only as a technical support for users on their computers or smartphone. If you are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our IT manager will help you troubleshoot. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video will be posted to WCRoads.org in the coming days. Today's meeting agenda is posted on WCRoads.org, and there is a link available in the chat if you are joining us from your computer. I will now call the meeting to order. Currently speaking is the chairman of today's meeting, Doug Fuller, from Scioto Township in Washtenaw County, Michigan. Barb, are you there?
I am Barbara Fuller, participating remotely from Sharon Township in Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Green.
Good morning. I'm Roderick Green. I am participating remotely from Superior Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Gloria Yamas.
Good morning, Gloria Yamas, participating remotely from Pittsfield Township.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum.
I'm present. I'm participating remotely from Ypsilanti Township in Washtenaw County.
Managing Director Cheryl Siddell.
Present.
County's Highway Engineer Matt McDonnell. Director of Operations Jim Harmon.
Present, Mr. Chair.
Director of Finance and IT Mr. Ackerman.
Here.
Now we come to public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please virtually raise your hand now. I'll repeat, if you are viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen, and then the Raised Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can virtually raise your hand by dialing *9. The meeting host will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. The host will announce your username or the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. As with all of our meetings, while this is a time to receive comments from the public, this is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person would be allocated 3 minutes to address the board. Emily, do we have anyone at this point with their hand raised?
At this point, Commissioner, we do not, and I do want to correct, Matt McDonnell is here. I just didn't allow him to unmute, so he's here. But
Okay,
we do not
thank
have
you.
any members of the public that have their hands raised.
Okay, fine and dandy. This working session is principally a budget function, a report on the year as it turned out so far this year and on to next year. Cheryl, would you like to lead us in that discussion?
Sure, I'll start very quickly and then I'm going to hand it right over to Dan Ackerman, our Finance and IT Director, since obviously this is his area of expertise. But starting with 2020, I think that you'll see that we actually ended up in pretty good shape. I know that there was a lot of trepidation when it came to how budgeting would go this year. Obviously, the pandemic had a lot of uncertainty for all of us with less travel, knowing that gas tax is one of our primary sources of revenue, in addition vehicle registration fees, and not knowing, again, with budgets on the personal level, if people would be purchasing new vehicles or how they would be registering their vehicles. So we had budgeted pretty conservatively with respect to the MTF, and I think that as Dan will be able to demonstrate, we've recovered nicely. We did have a banner year with respect to construction, both on the local level and certainly on the federal and state level, just a huge number of projects that were completed. So with that, I'll be more than happy to hand it over to Dan and he can walk us through sort of the details. Dan?
Thank you, Cheryl. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that Emily will be displaying, and just want to reiterate what Cheryl said. You know, such a banner year. I saw some of the emails this morning with, you know, Jim and the commissioners as far as the operations department and just the workload that they were able to accomplish. A banner year for our federal and state projects as well. So kudos to engineering. All during a pandemic, which who would have thought, I guess. It's kind of nice that I've been reflecting on 2020. Hopefully we can put it in our rearview mirror sooner rather than later. You know, again, who thought a pandemic would happen? And again, just want to reiterate the great job that Chris Quinter's doing. You know, on a dime, we switched from working in the office to working remotely, you know, putting all the stress and strain on our servers, our VPNs, and just what an awesome job that Chris did. You know, like I said, we barely skipped a beat. There are a few issues here and there that we had that he quickly fixed for us, and you know, just did an amazing job and continues to do an amazing job. As you know, with the latest directives from the governor, sounds like we're going to be having some more remote work for a while. So you know, all around, as I just reflected on everything, you know, all the work that was accomplished by everybody, given all the challenges that we faced, you know, I was really proud of the year that the Road Commission has had. Okay, Emily, go ahead and start that, please. Oh, okay, thank you. And commissioners, so like I said, we have a slideshow here, PowerPoint, but feel free at any time if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to bring it up. You don't need to wait till the end unless you'd like to, but you know, feel free to interject at any time. So we're going to first talk about our 2020 budget and where we think we're going to end up at the end of this year. Next slide, Emily. Okay, can't talk about 2020 without talking about COVID, unfortunately. And as Cheryl mentioned, in the second quarter, we were not really certain what the impact would be on this agency. We were receiving a lot of guidance that it might be about a 10% reduction in Michigan transportation funds. So in the second quarter, we reduced the Michigan transportation funds by about $3 million. I'm happy to report things did recover a little bit, and we were able to cut that in half, and we're only expecting about a $1.5 million decrease, which is about the same as what we received in 2019 as with regards to the Michigan transportation funds. And as we say, and we'll continue to say, we're going to monitor it closely. We have no idea, you know, the COVID numbers seem to be up, and we have no idea what impact that will be going forward. But you know, certainly we'll continue to look at it conservatively. Next slide. So I had to, when we initially did this slide, I had to do a double take. I thought that the orange and the numbers in parentheses were the same numbers, but they're actually, the orange numbers are where we think we're going to end up with this last take as far as year end. And then in parentheses there is the second quarter, and you'll notice how similar they are. So I like to say it's because we do such a good job here at the Road Commission. Some of it could be dumb luck as well, but you can see very little change from the second quarter to what we're projecting. I did want to focus on the deficit spending. It's about $5.2 million, which a lot of that was projected, going all the way back to the initial budget. But again, and this will be a common theme as well, we have a conservative budget, so I fully expect us to make up, maybe even close to half of that deficit with the numbers that we are using right now. And the fund balance we're projecting at the end of 2020 is about 16.4 million, which is about 22% of our expenditures. We talked about this before a little bit, but Plant Moran has given us a target of between 15 to 25% your fund balance should be of expenditures. So that's right where we want to be. Next slide.
Dan,
Yes.
What does that deficit spending represent?
What does it represent? It just all the work that we are doing. Again, it's a banner year as far as federal aid. Federal aid, we do have a local share for the Road Commission. We had $4 million in road equipment we purchased. Also a banner year for our operations department. As far as all the work that we've been doing, and some of that is utilizing Michigan transportation funds. We also had some significant culvert projects that were just on MTF dollars. So really, Rod, it represents a combination of things.
So, Dan, our revenue was 59.9. We spent 65.1 million.
Right.
Which meant we went over by 5.2 million, right? That's what the
Yep.
deficit spending is.
That's correct, right.
So-
But we
Okay, that's
still,
what I was asking.
okay,
But
okay.
that was planned.
Right, it
Okay.
was, right, correct. It was planned. If you recall, in 2019, we had a lot of carryover projects, a little bit of capital expenditures that we carried over as well. And then the first quarter, we made those adjustments. 2019, I believe we added to our fund balance by over $1 million, maybe $1.5 million.
Okay,
So
so
that represents money that was spent that we didn't plan to spend but had to spend.
Well, right, the money that, so again, in 19, we were planning on doing some deficit spending. We had to carry a lot of that over into 2020 as well, so.
Okay.
Right, so we basically put in the bank in 19 money that was spent in 20. So we knew that we were going to be going over budget or deficit spending in 20, and that was planned.
Okay,
Yep.
sure. See, I was trying to get an understanding of what that word deficit meant. So
Okay.
That's money that's gone over budget.
Yeah, expenditures over your revenues.
Right, our
Okay.
expenditures are greater than
Right.
our revenue.
Right,
Correct.
okay,
That's what
thank
the-
you.
That's what the deficit is, but that was intended. We knew where our fund balance was at, and we had planned to spend down our fund balance by roughly $5 million. So we're
Right.
right where we thought we were going to be on that.
Well,
Right.
thank you very much.
And Rod, really the key here is that fund balance of 16.4 million. Obviously that can't be zero. We don't want it to be anywhere near zero. You never know when a pandemic may happen, right? So, so that 16.4 million, again, is about 22% of expenditures, which really puts us in a good spot. And if there were any issues, we could still weather the storm, no pun intended.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on this slide? Okay, Emily, next page. So as I mentioned, our Michigan Transportation Funds did increase to 29.5 million. We had a little bit of carryover with our federal and state funds. There was some projects that were carrying over, and our township contributions were down a little bit. We had some fewer culvert projects that we thought, fewer reimbursable culvert projects that we were going to work on. We had some favorable township project costs, which met lower expenditures, but also lower revenues. Next slide. And then correspondingly for reimbursable road projects, we had a few carryover projects, so our contractual services were slightly down from what we were budgeting. Okay, Emily, next slide. And I guess that's all as far as the 2020 budget, unless there's other questions.
I do have questions. I
Sure.
wanted to know the impact on what we had budgeted for fuel. I see those, I like those that Jim sent to us on what was projected and what we've spent. how that's helped our budget. Do you know, is that easy to discern or not?
Yes, so there's a couple of things that we look at. Sorry, I'm pulling something up on my detail sheets here. There's the pricing, which is, one huge factor, which Jim certainly has been sharing with you, and there's consumption. So again, depending on winter, for instance, if it's a particularly harsh winter, we're going to use more fuel.
Right.
So certainly the price points were in our favor for the most part. And, Jim's spreadsheet shows you the budget compared to what the actual prices are, as well as the consumption was both of those were down. And I'm looking at it here. So we had budgeted about 500,000 for diesel, and we're planning on coming in at about 428,000. So that's significant. We actually think that's a bit conservative because we don't know what's going to happen the next 2 months. Gloria, just so you know, we plan for almost a worst case scenario with regards to winter because we don't know what Mother Nature is going to have in store for us.
Right.
We have some of those numbers in that budget line item for fuel, for salt, and so on. Obviously, we're to mid-November. I thought I saw it's supposed to be in the 50 degrees the end of this week. So let's hope it continues to be warm, although obviously we had some challenges today. But we do have that factored into that. So depending on what Mother Nature does, we might be able to see even further savings from that.
Yeah, fuel and salt are two areas where we are very likely, fingers crossed, we may make up ground. We've planned for bad weather for November and December, so a fairly high consumption rate. And every day that we don't have to do winter maintenance is a day that we're gaining ground with respect to those two items. So that is an area, like Dan said, we budget conservatively. Even now, knowing where we're at, we've made some minor adjustments, but we're still, being that it is November and we could still have 6 weeks potentially of some bad weather here where we would be doing winter maintenance. So we are budgeting conservatively there, but if the weather holds for us, we will make up some ground in that area.
And Gloria, just to demonstrate how unpredictable Mother Nature is, last year, we had a huge snowstorm on Veterans Day. We called it the Veterans Day storm. And I believe we had to make some adjustments the other way because we had significant costs. And that was one of the earliest we had such a huge snowstorm. So you never know. Like I said, Mother Nature is unpredictable, but we want to make sure that we have enough in our budget to get us through to the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions about 2020? And certainly if you think of any, feel free to bring them up at any time. So before I talk about the 2021 budget, you may or may not have noticed it's in a completely new format. Just wanted to give kudos to Emily, who did a majority of the heavy lifting on this. I was kind of thinking about the old format of the budget, which the 2020 is in the old format. My predecessor used a similar format, so we're probably going 30 plus years. So it was probably time to kind of refresh it and make, give it a nice modern look to it. And hopefully the commissioners, citizens feel it's a more readable, usable document. Emily would always joke a little bit with me that, when I go over the budget, I talk about the summary sheet, which in the old format was one of the last pages. So when we talk about the budget, I'd say, go to one of the last pages. But now for 2021, we've included that as one of the first pages because that's obviously one of the most important parts of the document. So was just wondering if the commissioners had any feedback. Do you like the new format? Do you feel it's more readable? Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on it? And certainly, it's just a starting point because, we're basically just getting that new format going and we're going to continue to revise as we go along. But I was just wondering if the commissioners had any feedback on it.
Dan, I really appreciate the new format. The narrative is particularly helpful and refreshes my memory of how each department is built and constituted and the number of people there and what their scope of responsibility is. That's something that I think you might have presented previously in PowerPoint presentations or other verbal updates to the board, but I think it's really helpful to have that in writing. And it's an outward facing document as well to the public. So anyone who wonders, so what's operations? What does that mean? And
Yeah.
what do you mean township contributions? I thought the money was all supposed to be coming from the road commission. I think you've done a beautiful job. I imagine this is hours and hours of work to put this together and make it so succinct. But I really appreciate the new format and want to compliment everyone who had a hand in it.
Certainly when Emily and Cheryl mentioned a new budget, I got a little nervous about it, but I try not to manage to the past, meaning, oh, you know, we've always have done things a certain way, tried to keep an open mind. And Emily was great to work with, a lot of great ideas. And we're trying to minimize any additional work that goes into this. So we're still trying to automate things as much as possible. And also trying to make sure the numbers don't get lost in all the narratives that we're sharing as well. But again, you know, majority of the heavy lifting goes to Emily, so kudos to her for sure.
Yeah, Emily quickly labeled it a facelift because we needed to assure Dan that we weren't changing the numbers in the budget. Right. We were only changing the appearance of the budget. So this was our facelift.
I would suggest it was an extreme makeover and a good one.
Yes, it is an extreme makeover, right?
But once again, I want to assure you the numbers are still sound. Yes. The math behind it still works.
Yeah.
Any other comments on the new format from anybody?
Well, I wanted to ditto what Barb said, because as presenting numbers can be, people can look at spreadsheets and go, what the heck? Yeah. Such a great job. I really appreciated it. I did.
Great.
Good work.
Okay, if there's no other.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I appreciate the way that you're doing it, because someone did want to know, you know, what the township's contribution was to the road maintenance. And so it shows it, so that way, you know, it's acknowledged that the townships do play a part in this.
Sure.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And also, I don't want it to get lost that, you know, Jim and Matt also are used to the old format, and they were very receptive to the changes. And there were some other additional information. We asked the, you know, the federal aid spreadsheet completely changed, and non-federal aid as well. And they were also very accommodating, and so I also wanted to make sure to acknowledge their hard work as well as, you know, as a team effort for sure. Okay, no other questions on that. We'll go to the next slide, Emily. So was trying to think of the best way to relay the overall financial position for 2021. So I landed on favorable. So we're projecting a fund balance about 16% of expenditures. So again, there's the 15 to 25% that Plant Moran has recommended to us. The 16% is a bit on the low side, but in 2021, as you probably have already read, we have another banner year as far as what our operations department is planning on accomplishing. The engineering department with the federal aid program. We have some IT initiatives in there. We've got $4 million in road equipment. So really, there's a lot of things in there. Again, we feel that we'll come in better shape than we had budgeted for 2020. So certainly that will have an impact on this fund balance here. We hope to be able to add some things back in the first quarter. Again, we don't know what Mother Nature has in store for us. That's always a part of the first quarter budget adjustment as well. Also, as far as 2021 with some of these initiatives, if we feel things are going in the wrong direction, we can always hit the pause button or delay some of the things that we have planned for 2021. And more specifically, our revenues, we're expecting about 32 million from the Michigan Transportation Funds. So the legislature, if you recall, in 2015, passed the new funding for the Road Commission that actually started in 2017. In 2021, the full impact or the full increase should be recognized. MDOT has actually said it's going to be about 32.5, but again, we're a bit conservative. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID, so we thought we would take MDOT's projections into consideration, but then maybe reduce it a little bit. Federal state funds, that's going up. So again, we had a banner year last year, but it'll be increased in 2021. So we're expecting that about $20 million. And of course, the voters were kind enough to approve our road millage. So that's about 4.1 million that we're expecting from that in 2021. Next slide. Certainly, we have a lot of challenges. I've already kind of beat to death the COVID impact, but certainly in March and April, when people are driving less, that did have a bit of an impact. So we'll see what happens the next few months. I wish I had a crystal ball on that, but I don't. So again, we'll just keep seeing what's been going on. And MDOT's been good to communicate with us. Last year or in 2020 with regards to the impact of the pandemic. The County Road Association also provided us information. We keep close ties with our peers as far as what they're seeing and what they're doing, what they're budgeting. So we'll continue to certainly monitor that. But that being said, 2021, another banner year. So we're expecting a high workload, which also means we need to have the staffing, which certainly Nicole and Alicia are working really hard with recruiting and doing all they can to get good. I had a great interview with the new hire yesterday, a truck driver that we're bringing on board. So, and I believe there's a couple others as well that have recently accepted positions with the Road Commission. So I know that they're doing all they can to get folks at the Road Commission. Certainly, there's a lot of competition with our peers for good qualified drivers and employees, and I know they're doing all they can to make that happen. So next slide. On the expenditure side, so we're expecting a lot with regards to revenues or increases to revenues. The same on the expenditure side. So our federal and state program, $27 million. The Road Commission's local share. So when we have federal aid projects, usually for construction, it's 80% federal and state grants, 20% Road Commission costs, and for bridges, it's usually 95.5. So we're putting in about 1.5 million, but we're getting $27 million of work. So, if it's costing us 1.5, but we get $27 million of work accomplished with all the things you're seeing here, reconstruction, resurfacing, our intersections, I would say that's a very valuable program and worthwhile.
Dan, I'm looking at page 4 of this draft 2021 budget report.
Yep.
Can you help me identify where that 27.3 million is on page 4?
I believe you'll want to go further in that document. Emily, do you recall what page we have that on?
It's on page 20.
Thank you. So Barbara, page 20 should have a detailed breakdown of all the projects that we're working on with regards to federal aid.
But it is in the 44 million, Dan. It is on page 4 under expenditures. It is listed. If you see project expenditures, road improvement program and construction, that's a part of the 44 million. And then, like Dan said, the details of it are on page, say that again, Dan, 20?
Page 20, yes.
Okay.
So Barbara, on page 20 is that 27.3 million. That's the total cost. That's including grant money, contribution from others, and WCRC expenditures.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And that's That's the new format that we're using for our federal aid program. A little bit easier to read, a little more descriptions on there, and you know, I think, you know, overall it looks much better than what we provided previously.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Because I know that's always a big point of interest for the commissioners, the federal aid program.
Yeah, Barb, just
Yes.
point of clarification. So on the revenue, it on page 4, it lists 20,137,000.
Yes.
So that's the revenue.
Right.
The page 20, which is a spreadsheet of all the expenses that we project for the federal aid program, is 27 million. So that includes like design and construction engineering and materials testing and consultant expenses as well. So that 20 program is going to cost 27 million, but the revenue projected is 20 million. So that's that local share of the program that Dan was talking about.
Okay. Now I was just looking for the companion item under expenditures related to revenues. So I appreciate knowing it's rolled into the project expenditure, road improvement program and construction. Thanks.
Yep, you got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this slide? Okay, we'll go to the next one. So our non-federal state program, and just in case you're interested in a detailed breakdown, that's on page 21. That's about 12.8 million. So we're working on intersections, again, our favorite culverts. Paving Zeeb Road, I believe this is Zeeb Road Phase 2. We paved Zeeb Road, the first portion of Zeeb Road, was that 19? In 2019. And of course, we've got plenty of millage projects as well. Any questions on this page?
So the rest of Zeeb Road gets paved next year?
Correct, down to Pleasant Lake Road.
Woohoo! Boy, traffic counts are gonna go sky high down that road.
Yes.
That will be one of the changes that happens, yes.
That, Barb, that corresponds to all the for sale signs on the properties down there.
Indeed, indeed.
Oh. Okay, any questions on non-federal aid at all? Okay, we'll go to the next slide, Emily, please. Thank you. So some of you maybe like to see things graphically. So Matt had made the suggestion, well, let's have our 2021 road and bridge improvement projects map as part of the budget presentation, which I think was an excellent suggestion. So Matt, I don't know if you want to say a couple of things about this.
It's obviously a graphical representation of the federal aid program and the local road program. We can get you copies. It's a little hard to see on the screen, obviously, with people looking at laptops, and you've got the gallery and the presentation going. But certainly we can get hard copies, and that may be very beneficial. So this is just a projection of all the work that's going to take place in 2021. You can see if you zoom in, there's X's over the millage projects, and then and really it's more talking about the scope of work, whether it's a mill and overlay, or it's a pulverize and resurface, or if it's a chip seal coat project, or a limestone project, or non-motorized. So it's got all the different kinds of scopes of work, and that's really what's useful, I think. And certainly our more significant projects will have project pages on our website where people can get updates, and we can have a little more refined schedule as well. So this is basically our 2021 workload is taking shape, and we've mapped it, and will also be, it'll be up on our website here shortly.
I'd just like to make a note at this point. You bring up a project map. There is a new gravel pit that will be opening on Pleasant Lake Road, 0.9 miles west of M52. And the haul route that they have submitted to the township obviously will be that location west to M52 and then to parts beyond. But that's going to be a significant change in how that particular stretch of road on Pleasant Lake is utilized. I think it's going to beat the devil out of it. And how many years ago was it that we did an overlay on Pleasant Lake Road because it was so bombed out? Was that?
That was within the last few years. That was fairly recently that we did that overlay, but that road's been a challenge for a while. And we know that. And we are actually meeting with Sharon Township. I have spoken with Peter Sarathakis. I know Matt and Mark have as well. So we're just trying to make sure we're working together, and Peter has been wonderful in that regard. So we're trying to have a united front, so to speak, so that anything that the township the road commission can do to support the township and vice versa, we're on the same page, knowing that that's going to be moving forward. And certainly we want the infrastructure there to support that facility going in.
I'm particularly concerned about the intersection, that split phase light at M52 and Pleasant Lake, and the impact of that and how long it takes those double bottom trains to get through there. And so just wanted to make sure it was on your radar.
Yeah, Matt and Mark have done a nice job of bringing MDOT in wherever necessary as part of the permitting process. If they've had intersections or facilities that have been in close proximity, they do a nice job of looping them in as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the project map? Okay, Emily, we'll go to the next slide. As I mentioned, banner year again for our capital outlay. We're expecting about $4 million for our road equipment and much needed improvements to our facilities, about $500,000. We also have some IT initiatives. We had talked about a full-blown disaster recovery. We've got that budgeted now. So, you know, just a banner year all around, really. Any questions on this slide? Okay, next slide, Emily. Of course, we can't forget about our non-departmental costs. A big one is our medical insurance. We met with Brown & Brown, who is our beneficiary agents. So we're expecting about a 4% increase for our medical insurance, which unfortunately, when you talk about medical insurance, you're always talking about some sort of increase. And we asked the question, how do we compare to a lot of their other clients that they have? And they thought that the 4% increase that we're expecting is lower than most of their clients. And, you know, they're doing a really nice job containing our costs. Again, with health insurance, the costs are always going up, but it's at what rate? Will it be 10%, 5%? And they've helped us maintain, you know, reasonable increases with our health insurance costs. We also have an additional other post-employment benefits payments that we've been trying to make the last several years, as well as our MERS pension, another $450,000. So these are not required by us to fund them, but we're showing our commitment to our employees and our retirees by making these extra commitments, trying to address our unfunded liabilities as best we can. So again, if the road commissioner were to get into a financial situation that we were a little uncomfortable about our deficit spending, this is something, again, is not required, so we could always revisit this if we had to. Any questions on this? Next slide. So what are the next steps with regards to our budget? Our first meeting in December, we need to have a public hearing. And if anything changes from the working session today to December 1st, we will make sure we communicate that with the board, any significant changes. And just a reminder that the road commission cannot open our doors on January 1 without a board approved budget. So certainly very important. We want to make sure that the commissioners have a comfort level with everything. And you know, it's definitely very important that we get your support as far as approval of our budget ultimately, so we can make sure that we can continue our operations starting on January 1st. Emily, next slide. So I don't know if there's any other questions. Again, with the new format, I'd be curious if the commissioners would like us to include anything that we haven't, or could something be excluded? Just any other suggestions you may have. You know, this is going to be a living, breathing document, and we'll continue to refine it as we go along. But I think we've got a great start, and you know, I'm really proud of the things that Emily's done with it, and you know, I just think it's a great communication tool for the commissioners as well as the citizens.
Thank you, Dan. What a great job. I was looking for specific things. I understand, and thanks about the increase in medical. I wondered what that was going to look like.
Sure.
The other thing that I was wondering is the pay into the pension fund. If
Yes.
that is included in the budget and where I can find that. I kind of was trying to scrub through, but maybe I was trying to go too quickly.
So that would be, Gloria, that would be in non-departmental. Sorry, I'm looking at it right now. It's in the appendix.
Page 17, Dan?
Appendix D, correct, page 17. Account 716, medical insurance.
Okay. And the retirement, is that where that's going to be in retirement? Like we were paying back into the pension fund?
Correct. So that's line item 718.
Okay.
And what we have in there, Gloria, is we receive monthly bills from MERS, which obviously we pay, and then we have that additional amount as well to again try to address our unfunded levels.
So the unfunded levels is what I was concerned about. So these are all in there. So our projected was 22,000 or 2,972,000, and it looks
Right.
like we're under budget. Do we not have enough money, or so you started to say we received the bills and then we put in. Are we going to put in what we projected for 2020, or is there more to come to this live number? I know this is a live, it's just a snap in time.
And Gloria, what you're looking at, the 2020 anticipated expenditures of 2.9, which I believe are as budgeted, and then 2021 the budget's 3.4, so it has gone up. But you know, we also plan on funding it to that level as well. So you know, certainly, anytime MERS sends us a bill, we pay it, and we also have enough to pay on top of that as well. And that would be the case for 2020 as well as 2021. You want to look at the 2020 budget and look at the budget compared to actual, which should be pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we are actually obligated to pay MERS what they bill us, you know, each month, and then you know, the last several years we've also made a payment on top of that as well. So.
Right, we've done that for both our OPEB, so that's for the medical and retirement for those who are still eligible for that. So we have that obligation that is out there, as well as our retirement, our MERS system. So we're paying not only what we are required to pay, we've also been making additional payments to both of those systems annually. And that's been part of the plan that we did have to submit to the state, that we were intending to do that to demonstrate that we are fulfilling those obligations.
Right. I do remember this, having those meetings, talking about our obligations to the state and how we were going to take care of the deficit that we had.
Exactly. So this is what you see budgeted here is consistent with the plan that we submitted to the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, and certainly, Gloria, one of the most important things is the annual report to Michigan Department of Treasury with regards to our pension and our retiree health insurance. And if you recall, the retiree health insurance, our OPEB, was fine as far as you know, their percentage funded. And for our pension, we had to submit that action plan, and they did ultimately accept that. So really, that's a key indicator. Are we on the right track, and we're complying with the new state requirements? So, you know, if you look at it from that standpoint, you know, I feel like we're on the right track.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
And this isn't a cash flow situation. Do I understand that correctly? We have an outstanding liability that's projected over the life of the employees. So
Right.
It's not that we're behind
No, no,
or falling short in our ability to meet our obligations. It's that we've got this big picture that we're supposed to fund, and we're whittling away at that.
right.
Right?
And
Okay.
that's correct. And, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint with our pension and our OPEB. But we've reached out to MERS and Plant Moran, and they feel we're doing pretty much all we can to, you know, with among all the other obligations we have as an agency, that they feel we're doing all we can to address any sort of unfunded situation. I don't know if, did we lose Barb, or is she still there? Okay, are there any other questions on either 2020 or 2021 budget or the format or anything else that we can discuss right now?
I thought that was a good presentation, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it gives an excellent overview also of our funding, you know, makes it a lot less complicated, even though it's a complicated system.
Right.
It does help, you know, kind of break it down too. So I appreciate that,
Sure. Sure.
making something so complicated look a lot easier.
Yeah, great. And that was the goal. The goal, Gloria, is just to have a little more information in there. Certainly staff is familiar with it, but we want the reader, commissioners, any citizen to have a better understanding by just, you know, going through that document.
Right. Yeah, that's accomplished. Great job. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I guess that's all for me, and I appreciate everybody's time. And certainly if you come up with questions between now and our first meeting in December, feel free to reach out and we'll do our best to answer them.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Guess we'll turn it over to Doug.
Well, you can turn it over to me. I would turn it back over to the managing director, Cheryl.
Okay.
Have we? Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Cheryl.
I believe we've concluded our discussion on the budget. The next step will be a public hearing at the next meeting, which is December 1st. The next thing on the agenda is chat with the road commission sessions. As just sort of a brief introduction, we started holding these in January of 2020. And they really came out of some comments, some feedback that we had received from the public, from other elected officials with respect to accessibility. Part of it had to do with, at the time, previously when we were also holding our board meetings, we do accept public comment. However, we've been very diligent about not responding to public comment during our board meetings. And until January of 2020, we did not have commissioner response as part of our agenda. So people would potentially come in, they would present information, and we would say thank you. And that was sort of the end of that. Obviously some people were frustrated with that and wanted more of a dialogue, and there was opportunities when certain issues could be resolved fairly readily at that board meeting. So we did two things. One was we did add commissioner response to the agenda. So there's an occasion when something can be resolved, or at a minimum, obviously it'll be directed typically to the managing director to then investigate if more information is needed to provide a formal response. So that was certainly one piece of it, was to add the commissioner response to the agenda. The other piece was, are there just issues that people want to bring forward? They just want to have an ear, so to speak, more accessibility to the board. So that is where, and I actually believe that it was Commissioner Green who came up with the idea to just hold sort of like whether it's a coffee hour, or we kind of talked about it, a couple of different formats, and we landed with this chat with the road commission as an opportunity to just allow people to come in and speak with a commissioner. I mean, we needed to be careful, especially at the time we only had 3 commissioners. So if we didn't want to have any perception decisions would be made, no quorums, no needing to post for public, all of those kinds of things. So at that point in time, we had set it up so that it was typically for a half an hour prior to a board meeting, and that it would be one commissioner, and it would be a staff person, typically myself, that would be sitting. And at that point, again, we were doing in-person meetings. So we were sitting in the boardroom, and we sat actually in the back. We had a table so that we could have it be more face-to-face as opposed to the formality of a board meeting where you were sitting at the dais and the person was presenting. Again, started those in January. I think I had asked Emily, I think we counted, maybe we had a total of 4 of them before we ended up in COVID, and had to obviously cancel those. And that really is expected to be done certainly at a minimum through the remainder of 2020 at this point in time. So that's a little bit of history. I'll add one other thing. Of the 4 that we had really one person who came in multiple times with respect to a specific project. That was a property owner at the intersection of Ann Arbor, Saline, and Wagner to express his concerns with the project. And we certainly listened to him on multiple occasions on that, and tried to answer the questions that we could and assure him, that things would be at least addressed as to the best that we could. And we're very clear about what we could or could not do for him at that. I believe we had one other property owner who came in to talk about some tree removal that we were doing on a road. Other than that, I don't know that we had a lot of participation. I think there was a couple of times when we had no one who showed up at some of the chats as well. So I guess I'm happy to open it up for discussion. I know that Emily and I have at least discussed the fact that when we can start meeting in person, we can certainly resurrect the chat. And the intent wasn't to walk away from it altogether. If we feel it's important in this virtual format to try to explore options, then certainly we can do that. Or if there's other concerns that the commissioners are hearing that staff's unaware of, please let us know. Because right now I have not heard any concerns with respect to accessibility of our board or of staff to the public. With that, I'm happy to open it up for discussion.
Cheryl, when you had it in person and you said you didn't want to set it up where you had commissioners where it was a quorum, how was it commissioners volunteered on certain meetings, or how did that happen?
We set a schedule, and we essentially, the intent had been to rotate. Again, we didn't get terribly far through that because we only had a handful of them, but the intent was to rotate it. And so each commissioner was assigned a meeting to come in ahead of time and to sit with myself through that period of time. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at least all 3 of both Commissioner Fuller's and Commissioner Green did at least attend one.
Yes, that was a good event. You know what? And I think that the public appreciated the fact that they were meeting with someone in person and helping to get a specific problem, at least maybe not resolved, but at least heard. Okay. And I think that's very helpful. With this virtual arrangement that we have today, that may not be as important, because people can do virtually what they might, were limited to doing in person before. So I don't know, but I think I would like to think that it's more easier for people to contact us now with the virtual arrangement. I don't know what others think about that, but I think we're a bit more accessible now than we were, because people don't have to come to the meetings and they don't have to have the one-on-one. They can still have one-on-one, but it can be virtually. What are other thoughts on that?
So my thoughts were, I saw that it happened. Thank you for the history, Cheryl. I wasn't sure how it worked. I think it's an excellent idea because I'm sure that the public loves that. But what I do notice is that the public now does not have an opportunity to speak because it is for comment only and not for a conversation. I didn't know that it was such a short history. My thoughts on it was that we would still be able to have the chat room, but the chat with the commissioner, but it would be on a virtual level. I didn't know if how it went, but it sounds like it didn't even go long enough to get a history on it. My concern or just my interest was that we could still have a way that the public could come and speak to a commissioner, a coffee hour, and certainly can't be done in person. So I thought it could be done virtually, still put out there that way. I didn't know how many people were interested in doing that or not doing that. I certainly would be. I think the need is different so that they could call in and have the same kind of ways that people can come virtually. Not everybody has access to internet, but they could certainly call in to these virtual meetings and maybe the same thing could happen during the chat. That's the only reason I put that out there. I think that was an excellent idea that you came up with, Rod. And I was just trying to think of how we can continue to be available as part of community outreach, community, because it's difficult to have that right now where we were in the public. I did see a couple of plows displayed out on Ellsworth Road. I didn't know if those were our plows. There were no signs by them saying what it was or what it wasn't, but I thought what you have done previously has been an excellent idea for community engagement so that people can still feel creating a way for the public to continue to feel that they have the ability to engage with us, because right now they cannot engage. They can come and watch us, but they can make a comment, they can send in a letter, but I don't know that there's a way for them to reach us. I don't know. They can call on my cell phone. I have to say I've tried to be better about having it close and having it on, but I don't know how many people in the public have a cell phone number of a commissioner, or if that's the way really we wanted to do it. I'd like it a lot more formal, because I'd like the fact that you're there, Cheryl, right? Because none of us, and I think we've all been on here long enough to know to not make a promise to somebody, but to at least give them the ability to feel like they're being heard and that something, and not have a pat kind of answer for the public, that we truly are concerned on what their issues are. So that was my thought on continuing the coffee hour via virtually. And I didn't know where everybody else stood on that, but that was my idea when I put that out there, to continue your creation, Commissioner Green, on the coffee hour sort of thing. How I understand how it got dropped publicly. I don't want to be publicly in the room with anybody, but I'd be willing to chat with them via Zoom or on the phone,
Well, when we have the support of a staff person, I think that's helpful. But I like what you said, Gloria. People just want to be heard. And they understand that, it may not be something that can be resolved right away, but they can be heard right away. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if we can continue it on some type of virtual level, I think will be great. We need that public engagement. And like you said, at the meetings, there's not a real opportunity for a dialogue, but if we can have something either before or after the meeting where people can feel like that their concerns are being heard, I think that's helpful as PR for the commission, as well as, just a useful service to the community. But people need to be heard, and they have a right to be heard. They do.
I agree. So that's my thoughts and follow through on the email that I sent to all of the commissioners in regards to the coffee hour, and to you, Cheryl. I'm glad now that I understand it. I like the principle behind it. And as I've thought about how can we continue to service the public and have some civic engagement, how can that happen? And it seems to me that's I don't know what kind of pressure that would put on you or on the administration, you know, out of your time, what that would look like or not look like. But that's something I'm interested in us offering to the public, you know, that they still have the ability to be heard, especially in these particular difficult times that people feel shut out and isolated. This is the best way we have to offer folks to be heard.
Well, I would certainly be more than happy to work with Emily to see if there's a way that we can come up with a virtual chat where it would be prior to the board meeting. It would probably be a format very similar to this. I do very much appreciate your comment about no promises being made. More often than not, we can absolutely hear people out. More often than not, issues are not straightforward. They are typically complicated, whether it be routine maintenance, it be project, it be whatever it is. So more than often than not, I like to make sure that we're touching base with whoever is actually responsible with the particular task that might fall under before we give an official response to anything. But we can absolutely listen, and that is no problem. And often explain at least how we come about some certain things.
Right. And that's my thought, is that the public can then be educated on how the process is, because often people just think it's simpler than what it is. And if they know what the process is, how our hands are, our decisions are made by law, you know, and by policy, how they're put forth, then they can understand that they're not being ignored. And I think that's the biggest thing that the public needs to learn or know, that their concerns are still valid. You know, we need to validate that they're being heard. And if we can make changes or set them in the direction on how they can make the changes happen, if they need to start in their township or their city or where it might be, I think that's important. I was interested in how the rest of the commissioners felt about that, because then I also know that would be extra time, which I don't have an issue with, but that was my intent on sending out that email to everybody.
I think it sounds like a good idea. I have been getting communications from people asking questions. I do send them to Cheryl. And but I think if there was a way on a regular basis, they knew that they could come and chat about it, they would probably, you know, that's another avenue they can go. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I would just add that it was an outgrowth of some interesting dynamics over the past 2 years that this coffee hour concept was instituted. When you look at the WCRC Fix-It history, that has been a huge improvement in terms of people being able to identify a concern, submit it, and get not immediate, but darn near an immediate response from the foreman in that area. Today's report shows, 178 for October inquiries for WCRC Fix-It. And in the past, perhaps those would have been frustrations that they had called and it got written down and then it had to be put in someone's mailbox. And, you know, it was a really long way around the track to get them a response. In addition to that, all the social media work that Emily has put into place with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, our virtual public meetings, all of those things I think have gone a long way to open the windows, so to speak, for people to be able to check in, express a concern. Having participated in a couple of those chat sessions, I enjoyed sitting there talking with whomever the staff person was that was assigned to them, but we didn't see a lot of people. People didn't come in and take advantage of that. So for Barb Fuller to have my data being utilized to sit for 30 minutes or an hour to talk to Cheryl or Matt or, you know, whomever. That's a concern of mine because of my internet connectivity. Something that occurs to me, would it be possible to have coffee hours, but have little time slots so people could sign up to come in, so we'd know whether there was anybody that day, nobody that day? We could be on
That's an
call,
idea.
so to
Mhm.
speak, right? If it's my day to be a chat point person, I would be at the ready to tune in. I know this has been a huge concern of Commissioner Jamnick's all along. And I really want to honor her concern and address it while balancing the utility of a commissioner and a staff person standing by or literally sitting there staring at each other while the coffee grows cold. So,
that's an
you know,
excellent
maybe by
idea.
appointment. They're even doing this at frame shops now, right? If you want to have to check in for a project, they post a schedule and you can sign up for a slot, and then they know we're coming. And so there are technological ways, but that's another IT burden, so to speak. And I don't know what the back end of that looks like. But just a thought, a way to be accessible, but make good use of everybody's time and resources during that chat session.
That sign up sounds like a great idea, Barb, and it would also give us as commissioners and staff people an opportunity to know beforehand what the problem is, so that when we come to that session, we have a little better. We have some background information, you know, and maybe some concrete answers that will help the person right away. So I think that's a great idea to have a prior sign up of somehow.
I just don't want it to be perceived as a barrier, right? That if you didn't sign up, you can't come in. That's
Right.
not my goal at all. And that would be my biggest fear with a sign up, but at least it would give us an idea of whether we had 50 people who wanted to talk to us or we had nobody
Correct.
who wanted to talk to us.
To that, Barb, can I jump in there? To that exact point, everything that everybody has said makes perfect sense to me. Is there a mechanism by which we could simply put out there, and I'm asking the question, this is also for Emily and for staff as well, certainly. Is there a way we could put out there every week on I don't care, a Thursday, a Friday, because the front end of the week every week is busier than the back end of the week. So if we made it on Thursday or Friday in the morning, call down here and we'll set up an appointment where you can talk to a commissioner and a staff person simultaneously next week. I throw that out there. And that gives you the opportunity that Rod just mentioned of at least some idea of, you know, my problem is with drainage on Rawsonville Road. A thought.
Yeah, we certainly don't have to partner them with board meetings. We had previously been doing that because of the fact that
Exactly.
we were doing it in person and we weren't trying to make people travel more than once. Especially if we had a working session that day. So if we're going to do it virtually, and Emily, you can electronically kick me if you want, under the I would think that if we're going to do this virtually for right now, that we could pick whatever day is most convenient for the commissioners. Staff is here from 7:30, from 7 to 3:30 most days. Obviously, we have meetings and other things that we also need to attend as well. But for the most part, we're here. So I think that whatever's going to work best for commissioners right now. And doing some form of an RSVP, if there's a way to do that and it makes sense, I can appreciate that that makes the best use of people's time. And if they're willing, to your point, Barb, we don't want it to be perceived as a barrier, but it also does help if they let us know ahead of time what the subject might be, because sometimes we can answer that question, or perhaps the staff person that day isn't me. Perhaps the staff person that day is Jim, and he can explain why we do or don't do something, or Matt if it's project related. So we can make sure we have the appropriate person there as well on our end.
Since we now have 5 commissioners, could we pick a day? And I would suggest maybe noon as a time frame for people who work second or third shift. I mean, not everybody's on the clock from 8 to 5, so to speak. There are others who have work schedules that differ from that typical business window. But, you know, every Friday at noon, there's an opportunity for people to have a chat with a commissioner and a staff person, so that the public doesn't have to know what our meeting schedule is. That, I mean, when you talk that through, that was one of the responsibilities, that anyone who wanted to chat would have to know when our meetings were, what time they were, figure that out, and get themselves in here, not here, but there.
Right.
Come to the Z Road office at that day and that time. So if we just created a schedule where there needed to be, you know, a day and a time that was kind of an open mic situation, the RSVPs would be helpful. Maybe we don't make them required. And if we don't have RSVPs ahead of time, then that commissioner on that day and that time would need to agree to be on call. So Barb would have to have her phone on and have it charged so that she would know you were trying to reach her, and be ready to jump in to join a Zoom call or a phone call for people who don't have access to the internet, or that time of day they're not at a computer and couldn't jump in. Maybe they don't have a smartphone, don't know how to use it that way. But to make it predictable for everybody concerned.
Right. And I do like that idea about a noon, because there are people who maybe are working virtually, not working virtually, and lunch hour is a time that they can jump on.
Well, and a lot of people are still working and were even during the essential services only
Yes.
time. So I think we need to be mindful that just because we're all staying at home, not everybody is.
Right. Grocery workers, you
Road
know,
commission people.
yeah, road commission people. All,
Well, I mean, I have an acquaintance that's a welder, and he was somehow considered an essential service worker, and he was at work every day, regardless of whether it was stay at home or not.
yeah.
Are we talking about half hour increments or a half hour? Okay.
I think I misspoke. I do actually think it was an hour.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, the original chat with the road commission was scheduled from 11:30 to 12:30 on the Tuesdays before our board meetings, to try to give you then as the board a little time to get ready for the 1 o'clock meetings. But yeah, they were for an hour. So I think this is getting more into the territory of like an office hours thing, which isn't a bad thing. And I think we can definitely do it virtually. It's just a matter of what you guys want that to look like. But from a virtual standpoint, and we could do a sign up form on the website, or where people can call in and we can help sign them up if they want to get a slot. And then we can try to ask, what, if you want to share, what are you addressing the board about, or what do you want to talk about? So from a technical standpoint, I think we could do this. It's just a matter of what you all want it to look like frequency wise. But I think we could make this work.
So are you thinking once a month or?
Once a week is what I thought I was hearing.
That's what I suggested. So
Yeah.
it was predictable. People knew that on whatever, I'm just picking Friday out of thin air here, Rod. Every Friday at noon, there's going to be a staff person and a commissioner available if you want to talk to somebody.
I see. That's not bad.
If you want to,
And then we
Let's say-
can get answers to some of their questions, right? That was the beauty of it,
Mhm.
that we then had staff that we could tap into and say, so what's the history on this? What's the delay? What's the change? Whereas if you're sitting in a board meeting, I don't think it's respectful of everybody else's time to sit there and be dominated by one person's concern, which is why we went, at your suggestion, Rod, to the coffee hours.
Right.
Matt, did you have something to add?
yeah, I was just going to make this suggestion. With summer hours, if you want to consistently throughout the year, you may want to throw it on a Thursday.
Good point.
And I will make the observation, having sat in on a chat and just our experience with people coming to the board, I like the idea of additional accessibility and outreach. I fully support that. But I would say most times these folks have already talked to staff about the specific issue, and they just want to be heard at another level. They've been given an answer. They've been maybe not satisfied or not explained thoroughly enough to their satisfaction, and they just want to be heard. So I think it's a good thing. But oftentimes we've already had conversations, and Emily, Barb, I think it was you that pointed out that the C-Click Fix, our social media presence, has really addressed a lot of these historic issues. And I think we are not seeing as many folks wanting to get to the board level because we've put out a lot of information, our emphasis, our website, our social media presence, our tool box is much bigger. So I'll just give you those observations.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Matt. I do think that staff does a good job of trying to get back to people. This is an additional avenue. I do think that for the most part, staff is really very responsive. And again, if there was some kind of an RSVP and they were willing to identify the topic, that does also allow me or whomever the appropriate staff person is to provide history to the commissioner. So if indeed we're having a coffee hour and now somebody wants to air their concern and they're unhappy with the answer, we can at least give background as to what the issue is as staff and understands it and what the answer has been to date.
So is this something that the board would like to start immediately? Is this something you guys want to start January 1? I know 2020, who knows what the end of 2020 is going to look like, but is this something that you guys want to start before the end of the year or starting like with the new year?
For what it's worth, I'd like at this particular point as a place to start or to continue the conversation from is if we took Barb's idea of having a weekly set, whether it was a Friday or a Thursday or I don't care, time and place that you could put out there on social media and we could put on our website. It facilitates on noon on Fridays, I can call them up and bitch. Okay. Or have them explain to me why I got a note that my mailbox has to be moved. I just paid $2,750 to have that beautiful brick mailbox put right on the edge of the pavement for the facility of both myself and the postman. So those are the kinds of questions that we're going to get, and we have always gotten, and they need to be answered. I think Rod this morning said it just fine. People do need to be heard. Absolutely. So I think personally, if we said, okay, managing director, at the second meeting, because that's a month away nominally, of December, we could come back with a concrete proposal to the board members and say, fleshing out Barb's thoughts and Gloria's thoughts. These are our proposals. 'Cause the longest journey takes the first step. So let's take a first step. And I mean, Gloria is the person that brought this up, and I'd be perfectly happy to have Gloria be, so to speak, the board's point person on this. And let's move this along. I think it has merit. I thought it had merit when Rod first suggested it. There is no downside. And especially if we're going to do it virtually, it changes the dynamics of Barb's point of, occasionally coming down and sitting with a staff person for an hour. Useful chats most of the time, I would have thought, but nevertheless, if we do it virtually, if we and I like the suggestion of we could make ourselves available time-wise so that if somebody did call in without having called ahead and scheduled it, but if they knew that there was a opportunity on Friday to complain about or observe whatever it is, that a particular commissioner would agree to be available. Makes perfect sense to me. I think it's a reasonable use of everybody's time. But that's my sole suggestion out of that is I would like to charge the managing director with coming back in a month from now and with a at least fleshed out proposal. Other commissioners, please make a comment.
I'd suggest Wednesdays at noon, plunk it in the middle of the week. So there's an opportunity to get our sea legs Monday, Tuesday, hear a concern on Wednesday and do something about it, even if we're in summer hours. And then to put together a rotation, a schedule. I think that's what we did last time. We
did.
Put the three of us on a calendar, and if you couldn't participate on that day, it was your responsibility to reach out to another commissioner and say, can I swap my day for your day? It didn't then put the burden on staff to chase people who said, oh, I have a dental appointment, so I can't do that day. Well, then it's up to you. Your responsibility is to make sure that slot that was assigned to you is covered somehow by someone. And then you let staff know who that will be.
Perfectly reasonable suggestion.
So I like, so what I've heard thus far, and I think is good that we start as soon as we can, that I'm in agreement with Wednesdays at noon, appointments, if we can have them, and that's up to the IT person about how long it would take, that by appointment, if need be, but people didn't absolutely need it and they can reach us via phone. I like the on-call version of that because that makes it even more accessible to all of us. So I like all those ideas. And so I think the starting point would be how long it would take to make that happen via IT and with staff, how to do it. So I think I'm all in agreement with all of those and certainly would be more happy to be the point person. But I think we have some solid ideas going forward already. And the advertisement of that obviously would have to leave up to the administration, Emily, and everyone else, how we posted that. Certainly whatever message was put out, then I would also put on my Facebook page and on my next door neighbor and try to get it out there as best I could and enhance whatever is the commission is doing, the road commission.
Rod, are you in agreement?
Yeah, that sounds great. That 12 o'clock time spot might be a little problematic for me. I like 1 o'clock better, but if everyone thinks that we should do it at 12, that's fine.
1 o'clock's fine. I just didn't want it to always be 9 a.m. because that eliminates a whole tier of people whose work schedules aren't 9 to 5, so to speak.
I concur with Barb. However, I like the and Rod's thought. Most people have noon as a break in their workday, and are expected to be back thrashing around at whatever it is they do by 1. So that's why I kind of liked the idea of noon, but that's
Okay.
only my thought. And I'm not adamant about that. I just, for people that there are many people who work in fairly controlled environments and do not make phone calls when they're at work, and cannot make phone calls when they're at work. But
But if it's a problem for one of our commissioners, I would be, to be as inclusive as possible of all of us on the
Right.
schedule. If noon doesn't work for Rod, I'm willing to go to 1. And if we've got somebody who's got a burning issue and they've got to do it between 12 and 1, let me know and I'll pitch hit from 12 to 1. If I don't think that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah,
myself.
I don't think it is either. I just throw that out there as a thought. Joanne?
Yeah, I looked at my schedule to see if I had any standing meetings, or I'm on other boards and things like that. And so Wednesday looks good. I don't seem to have any standing meetings on Wednesday. So the time 12 to 1, 1 to 2, whatever works well with me.
Yeah. The only reason that I suggested the 1 o'clock is because, my history of Zoom meetings is they tend to run about at least 2 hours. So if something starts at 10 o'clock, it might run 12, 12:15, or if something starts at 11, it's going to maybe 12:30 or 1. So that's why I suggested the 1 o'clock as opposed to the 12 noon. But I understand what you're saying as well, Doug. I don't know when people take their lunches nowadays. I think, there's a lot more flexibility than there used to be.
Well, certainly for the employees that are now working at home, but there are a great many people, I would have said at least 50% of the workforce right now, who do not have opportunities to alter what the company says they're going to do.
That's right.
That way.
That's right.
There's, I don't know, several 100,000 people that work for Amazon. And if I believe what I read, they have 3.5 minutes to go to the bathroom anywhere between 15:15 and 15:35 on any one given day. So, anyway,
Sure.
So what are the commissioners okay with staff coming back at our next working session in December and having something fleshed out with the idea of putting it into effect more or less immediately? Number one, does that work for staff?
Enough
So
time.
I do have a question. So right now we're talking about doing this virtually due to the pandemic, and I totally support that. Is this something that you guys think you want to do virtually for the next couple of months, no matter what? Hopefully COVID numbers start to look better. I know we're in a rough spot right now, but is this something that you guys want to keep doing virtually for a while, or do we need to have fleshed out same plan for in-person, or is this always going to be a virtual thing no matter what the COVID situation is? What are you guys thinking as far as what this would look like for 2021 for those 12 months?
I'd like to see us be doing it virtually, if that's the word you want to use, in 2023.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, that's me. There are 4 other people involved in that conversation.
Well, that's me also. I mean, if it comes to a point where somebody wants to meet me in person, I won't be opposed to that. But on a going forward basis, it just makes it easier to be accessible to people in this way,
Exactly.
That's me as well. I just think it's virtually makes it more accessible to many more people as opposed to having to come in person.
Exactly.
I agree. I think people that have a hard time using Zoom, but the fact that they could call in, I
Right.
think that takes care of that. So I would keep it virtually.
Okay, thank you. That's the feedback I needed, so thank you.
Barb?
I'm in favor of virtual.
Okay.
So
So,
yes, I think staff is prepared to bring something back. And if we have any questions, we'll certainly work through Commissioner Yamas as our point of contact on this topic.
excellent. Anything else that people would like to bring before us this morning? Well, or are we ready to adjourn? And if so, I'm certainly ready to entertain a motion to that effect.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I would be interested in the county commissioners' thoughts on this discussion that we've just had.
Me too.
What would you like to do to have that?
Commissioner Jamnick, Commissioner Schenk, thumbs up, thumbs down, this is way off base? I mean, I just like some feedback.
Yeah, if I may, thank you. I appreciate the conversation around this, and I have to say that I understand that not that many people take advantage of it, and yet I think the WCRC Fix It is making a difference. I've had, since all of these communication strategies have been fully implemented, I don't get very many communications from residents, and when I do, I feel like they get taken care of more quickly anyway, or at least there's a response more quickly. So I think that it's in its totality is working really well. And I like the idea of a weekly session. And I think I could see the county commissioners taking advantage of that time to communicate with the road commissioners, because right now, if we wanted to talk to you, I don't know when you're available, right? Or whatever. So I think that could be an even more useful way of communicating for us too. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're muted. Good job. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I was getting worried. I just want to say thank you for taking on the chore of talking with people that want to talk with someone at the commission. For a long time, it was, thank you, appreciate what you're saying. And that was it. This is truly a great way to opportunity to talk to people, let them speak with someone and get response back. I guess I'm just this real little person. I believe that we have a responsibility. If someone has some concerns, we have a responsibility to respond. So I want to thank you very much for doing that. It's just hugely important, especially in the world that we're in today, and the atmosphere and everything with everything's kind of going crazy. People really want to talk to the person that can help them with the concern that they have. So I sincerely thank you all for being so willing to take that on. So thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Barb, does that satisfy your concerns there?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'll go back to my question a moment ago. If there are not other, we have completed the agenda. I'd be willing to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I support.
Okay, that requires, of course, because we're virtual, a roll call. Commissioner Fuller,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Yamas,
Yes.
Commissioner McCullum,
Yes.
and the other Commissioner Fuller says yes. We are adjourned. And I thank you, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock.